This was the image that Egypt's government didn't want the world to see. Despite restrictions on media and freedom of speech, Al Jazeera Media Network managed to broadcast to millions of homes around the world the historic moment when hundreds of thousands of Egyptians took to the streets calling for freedom in early 2011. As a result, ever since the January 25th revolution, Al Jazeera has been systematically and deliberately targeted by Egyptian authorities. In the early days of the revolution, gangs supporting the regime drove around with banners threatening to cut people's tongues off if they spoke to Al Jazeera. The network's offices were closed and its staff, including reporter Ayman Muhyiddin, were arrested and detained by the military. In August 2012, during the rule of the Supreme Council of Armed Forces, or SCAF, an Al Jazeera crew were attacked by police and thugs as they reported from outside the Sharm el-Sheikh hospital where deposed President Hosni Mubarak was receiving treatment. Then, during the presidency of Mohamed Morsi, one of the network's studios overlooking Tahrir Square was firebombed as security forces looked on. Then in July of the same year, just hours after Egypt's military carried out a coup ousting the country's first democratically elected president, security forces stormed Al Jazeera Arabic's offices in Cairo during a live broadcast, forcing the channel to go off air. By the end of that year, 5 Al Jazeera journalists were languishing behind bars. Abdullah Shami, Muhammad Badr, Peter Greste, Mohammed Fahmi and Bahir Mohammed were all in jail for no other crime than working as journalists for the Qatari-based network. Prior to their imprisonment, several other colleagues of theirs had also been detained and released arbitrarily in what was the most systematic crackdown any news channel has ever witnessed in Egypt. Added to that, since the January Revolution, the network's satellite signals have constantly been jammed. An investigation by world-renowned independent satellite specialists tracked the source of the jamming equipment to military installations across Cairo. All of this led to Al Jazeera filing a case at the International Center for Settlement of Investment Dispute in 2014, the body tasked with settling international business disputes. The network then gave the Egyptian government a 12-month grace period on top of the 6 required by the CSID to engage in settlement discussions. 18 months have gone by, yet the Egyptian government has refused to communicate positively with Al Jazeera. The network claim is based on the 1999 Qatar-Egypt Bilateral Investment Treaty. The agreement requires that investors be offered fair and equitable treatment by the governments of both countries. The treaty also obliged Egypt to treat Al Jazeera in a manner consistent with international human rights treaties. For example, to respect Al Jazeera and its employees' right to freedom of expression. Al Jazeera says a conservative estimate of the losses it has incurred due to Egypt's flaunting of the deal is $150 million. The network is hoping that by pursuing this case, not only will it be reimbursed, but more importantly, it will help protect journalists and their freedoms. Jamal Al-Shayal, Al Jazeera, Doha.
Let's bring in Saad Jabbar. He's an international lawyer joining us from London. Good to have you with us, Saad Jabbar. Talk us through what this all means by Al Jazeera formally initiating arbitration against Egypt. How is it going to work?
Well, firstly, the agreement on encouraging investment and protection of the same investments provides for the settlement of disputes. So this clause is in that very particular agreement. So it was not a hostile act by Al Jazeera to resort to international arbitration because it couldn't go to the Egyptian courts. So Al Jazeera has made that choice. And secondly, most parts of the Al Jazeera claim focused on the breach of the journalists' rights, freedom of expression, and the protection of journalists, where the Egyptian authorities have broken and breached every international agreement to which they are a party, in addition to the violation of customary international law and other conventions. The highest number of conventions and rules the Egyptians have, or the Egyptian authorities have broken, is in this instance. So it is not true to suggest that Al Jazeera went to arbitration because it sought money. This is correct, because without that agreement, or without having investments there, we wouldn't have had the forum to resort to this arbitration, because this arbitration or this forum is about the protection of investments. Therefore, the lawyers of Al Jazeera have used the claim in order to highlight the breaches against journalism, against freedom of information, and also against the UN Security Council resolution on the protection of journalists.
Okay,
so it is
and if I could
completely
ask
untrue
you,
to have suggested that.
If you could hazard a guess, I mean, the potential outcome, what's it likely to be, do you think?
Well, having looked at the claim, it is really justified. It is a very objective one. It has enumerated the breaches. It has relied on it referred to every breach in accordance with international law or convention or the conventions to which Egypt is a party. Plus, the quantum of losses has been assessed by top experts in the city of London or Washington. So it was not really benevolent. It is not an arbitrary claim, and people were plucking the figures from the air. And as I've said, during the detention of the Jazeera journalists, some Egyptian sources wanted to promote the idea that the Egyptians did not want to release the journalists because Al Jazeera resorted to arbitration. This is completely untrue because I'm aware of all the facts of this case. And in fact, the intelligence service in Egypt wanted to create or to drive a wedge between the families of the journalists who were in detention and Al Jazeera in itself. Al Jazeera has done what it could have done for journalists, okay, and it has resorted to arbitration in order to protect their rights and its own right as well.
Okay, Saad Jabbar, thank you very much.